Good evening, everyone. If you guys celebrate Christmas or you don't, then happy holidays and well wishes to everyone on this holiday. Now, I just want to kind of walk through some news stories very quickly. I know a lot of times we don't try to pay too much attention to the news because the majority of the news is depressing, but that's unfortunately is what draws most of the views. But nonetheless, I just want to go over a couple of news stories here very quickly. Parent uses right-wing slur during Biden call with NORAD Santa tracker. Okay, so one from the right called Biden a racial, not a racial slur, but a political slur of some sort. Okay. Teen girl assault suspect both killed by LAPD shooting. CDC shortens isolation time for healthcare workers with COVID-19. So if you're a healthcare worker with COVID-19, they're going to shorten the amount of isolation time. Probably it was at 14 days. It decreased down to 10 days. What now there may be even 5 days. We're just walking through the news here, just warming up a little bit before we get too deep, too quickly into what we're going to cover here tonight. Oxford prosecutor releases alleged school shooters drawing in case against parents. This is regarding the whole Crumley case of the high school mass shooter, okay? And essentially his parents allegedly helping him get away or possibly get away, but all of them are now in court. All of them are now incarcerated. Tesla owner blows up his Model S with dynamite over 22,000 battery replacement. I'm sorry. We just trying to lighten the mood here very quickly, but I've never heard of this in my life. Tesla owner blows up his Model S with dynamite over a $22,000 battery replacement. I've been telling people for years, listen, hey, Ross, you into tech. Why haven't you got yourself a Tesla? For that reason and that reason alone. One of the main reasons why I wouldn't buy a Tesla right now, for one, not just the driving infrastructures versus like charging the battery, but the infrastructure of replacement parts, or it's still a car, ladies and gentlemen. You can get into an accident. The weight and the locations where you have to get your cars fixed with Tesla is away from the beaten path. It may be in another state in some cases. So again, everybody wants to look cool, go get a Tesla, want to save the world, but the industry is not there yet. Granted, people do have to buy cars and go through some of those tribulations, but I'm not willing to do that. Okay, there's people who are willing to do that and help innovation. No, I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to pay $22,000 for a battery replacement. I do not. Good evening, Jermaine Anderson. I just don't want to pay that amount of money. Let me move on here. We're just going over some news, guys. Sunrun solar panels, everything you need to know, of course. When I just had Sunrun call me all last week, you know that was going to pop up in my feed. Mark Cuban took a trip to celebrate selling his company for $5.7 billion, ended up in the coach middle seat. Okay. Biden's about to adopt a policy that could hurt Dems even more with rural voters. So on and so forth. So life goes on. But the one thing I've noticed, family, is for us, when we really look out into any groups of people, any organization or political party that they say that there are for Black people, like we really want to help you guys out. We hate the fact that you guys are in the financial and discriminatory bind that you're in, right? They kind of dress it up a little bit prettier than that, right? Because they like to pat that back. They like to pander to us. So I just had a thought today. And I was just thinking, I said, well, who is for us? Now, granted, we should be for ourselves, first and foremost, right? The order of business should always be taking care of your family first, then your community, and then so on and so forth, right? You can't do what a lot of, unfortunately, our ancestors did, was leave their families in a predicament where they had to fence for themselves. No, I believe, this is my personal opinion, that you take care of your family, your community, and then, the whole group of people. Can you do all of those simultaneously? Of course you can. Of course you can. But outside of that, I thought about what organization, private or public, what political machine, state or federal, that have known to have a consistent track record, a consistent support within our communities. For all the places where a majority of Black people live at. When have you seen that? Because I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that in any political, federal, state arenas. Not at all. So I just kind of wanted to go through the news very quickly, but let's get into it. Okay. So I kind of wanted to start it off with this story right here of how Simone Sanders, the chief spokesman, to leave the White House. And this is where Kamala Harris is cleaning house, because her approval ratings are below 28%, which is like, I think, the lowest in history of a vice president. Right. And it speaks for themselves, because when we look at the Democratic Party, and of course, I'm beating a dead horse, we know that they pander to us and they have really, really done nothing for us. Now, granted, prior to that, when we was a Republican Party, believe it or not, there's a lot of legislation that got moved, but then it pretty much stood at a standstill, especially economically. Okay. Now, we're not in shackles, but this is what you call modern day slavery. You control a group of people financially, and not even financially, psychologically as well, and socially. So all of these are forms of white supremacy. They just evolved. Okay. They just transformed into something different than chains, whips, and pressuring people to do things. They still pressuring people, but they're tantalizing them. They're giving them jobs. They're giving them positions. They're giving them authority, right? And then when those things don't pan out, okay, because of the pandering, they're told to leave the White House. They say, you're not welcome here anymore. Your services are done. You have done nothing for the administration. We needed your black face. We needed your black face, and say that we were doing something for Black women, because we understand that Black women are going to vote Democratic more than any Black man would. Because some Black men don't even vote. They don't even want to play politics. I'm not voting. Then you get those who vote, and then when they do vote, unfortunately, they vote a lot for Democrats. So they attack the women. They trick and coerce out women. And the way they do this, they put Black faces in white spaces. And they say, hey, my majority cabinet is Black. Right? Now these characters are now leaving the White House, supposedly on their own accord, but they got fired. So I wanted to take a look at the presidential cabinet, right, to see the reason why Black Americans don't get any support. Right? We really don't get any support. We don't get resources, funding, nothing. Right? The term reparation comes up and goes away as soon as it's spoken. So I said, maybe we don't have a large number of congressional or political figures in our favor, whether they be on Congress, the Senate, and even President Biden's cabinet. So I say it must be all white people other than Kamala Harris on President Joe Biden's cabinet, because I'm pretty sure you got the CBC Congressional Black Caucus, and then you have Joe Biden's cabinet. I know the CBC is Black, and I'm pretty sure the cabinet of Joe Biden is all white, with it except for Kamala Harris. So we're looking at the Biden-Harris administration cabinet. So you have Kamala Harris. Okay, white person, white person. Oh, there's a Secretary of Defense is black, Lloyd Austin. Okay, that's political power. Okay. Let's see, white person, white person, white person. Okay. Oh, Marcia Fudge. Funny last name, no pun intended. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Okay. I'm looking at the faces. Dr. Miguel Cardona. All right. Moving right along, Michael Reagan or Regan, Administrator of the Environment and Protection Agency, EPA. Okay, moving right along, Linda Thomas Greenfield, United States Ambassador to the United Nations. That's political power. That's political power, right? You are the United States Ambassador to the United Nations. Do you believe she ever brought her own country up on humanitarian charges or implications? Or I'm just saying, first you would like to think there is no Black Americans, there are no African Americans on the cabinet of Joe Biden, but the Secretary of Defense, that's power, that's influence. The urban development, and I'm still looking at the Black communities. But I know a lot goes with voting. I got that. But I'm just looking at the amount of power and influence that we have within the Biden-Harris administration. I'm looking at the United States Ambassador to United Nations, Dr. Cecilia Rose, Chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. So, evidence shows me that we have a good amount of Black people in the cabinet of the Biden-Harris administration. But we still don't get any support or help there. Okay. So, just like anything else, we would like to go to our congressional members. We would like to see the members of Congress and what they're about, the Congressional Black Caucus. Because I did a video, I want to say about a month ago, where I went to each congressional caucus, the Hispanic, the Asian, the Black, and we already know about the white, but I did the minorities. And each one of those congressional Black caucus said 4 Hispanic people and Puerto Ricans live in blah, 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 and 4 Asian Pacific Islanders, Asian American and Pacific Islanders. It didn't say no other group. It didn't say underserved communities. It didn't say minorities or immigrants. It didn't say anything. It said their particular people. Okay? But you would think just because they know we just like reading headlines, we just like reading titles of journals and stories, right? But I always tell people, please read all of it. Most of these things you don't even have to read very, very, very long. Just read it. And then you'll see what those people are actually for. So, Congressional Black Caucus. I'm going to jump right down to here. Well, let me go here. I'm going to read from the beginning, family. Stay with me. Since the establishment in 1971, the Congressional Black Caucus has been committed to using the full constitutional power, statutory authority, and financial resources of the federal government to ensure that African Americans and other marginalized communities. Family, do you know what other marginalized communities are? Do you know where they are? Other marginalized communities are Asian communities, okay? Are Hispanic communities, are Afghan communities, are immigrant communities. Also, your lower poverty white class is in the underserved and marginalized communities. So already the CBC, who supposed to be for Black people, just like each ever group has their own congressional caucus that do things that are specifically for them, just like the Native Americans got the Indian Bureau, okay? The Bureau, Bureau of Indian Affairs. Let me get that right. The Bureau of Indian Affairs. They have that for their rights and reparations, okay? Their federal budget they receive every year. And so CBC is supposed to be working on behalf of Black Americans, okay? Black Americans, but not each and every other group. But nonetheless, let's continue to read. I'm going to stop right here. Reforming the criminal justice system and eliminate the barriers to reentry. Okay, the criminal justice and eliminate barriers to reentry. Combating voter suppression. Voter suppression is for everybody, not just black people. Expanding access to world-class education. Okay, that's for everyone. Expanding access to quality, affordable health care and eliminate racial health disparities. Okay, you can kind of argue this is for black people in a sense, but soon as you get to access to capital, now we're talking about money, contracts, and counseling for minority-owned businesses. Now, if you live more than a day, you know what a minority-owned business is. A minority-owned business is anybody who doesn't classify as a minority. Everybody who classifies white, and then everyone else. And believe me, you'll know if you're a minority or not. This is not white men included. Well, I know a lot of times we get confused about, well, it has to do with money. We have to pay off our political figures. And unfortunately, I agree with that notion. But at the same time, who are we to believe that we already haven't? I mean, I've heard of a lot of political organizations that are for black people who have given money but haven't seen any movement, right? They count that as a donation. Those are a lot of backdoor deals. But anyway, I don't want to get stuck there. So I went along and I said, well, who else will have our back? Black Lives Matter. But if you watch any of my content covering Black Lives Matter, and believe it or not, family, they moved it from their about section. When this first kicked off, Black Lives Matter, dealing with racial disparities during the pandemic and all of these race shootings against black people, I went on this website and I read about how majority of this organization is for LGBT. Now, since then, I guess everyone tore them a new asshole. They took that off their website. So now when you go and you read about Black Lives Matter, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Let me see if this is going to go in here. Now it states that BLM was founded in 2013, okay? Response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murder. Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is a global organization in the US, UK, and Canada whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy. This is the change of language. And build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes by combating and counteracting the violence, create space for black imagination and innovation, and centering black joy. We are winning immediate improvisation of our lives. And I try to scan here to see, was there any other alarming trick language inside of this about us? They totally erased all that about LGBTQ and LGBTQ and trans. They erased it all. They changed it. And I'm starting seeing the same language that you see a lot of people in the black community that's essentially speaking up for justice, empowerment, reparations, etc. Those members of the FBA as well as ADOS. So when I'm looking at their website, I'm saying we appreciate your support for moving ongoing black people and in white supremacy forever. They never spoke like this. They always talk about LGBTQ when it came to Black Lives Matter, but I digress. I don't even need to talk about this next group, family. You already know the NAACP has done nothing for black people, essentially. And if you want to know any history about the NAACP, understand that the NAACP was started by a white man. The NAACP was started by a white man. They even had white presidents on their board. They even had white presidents on the board of NAACP. You can't have people president of your organization for the very people you don't know who is enemy or foe. Until we're on an equal playing field, we have to treat everybody almost like the opposition. Because we don't know, just because you're marching with us, that doesn't mean you're for us. See, the one thing that we forget about, I think, in our communities, if people are marching with us and protesting with us, we automatically think they're for us. But see, that's how a lot of informants, that's a lot of Black informants, white informants, Asian informants came and infiltrated a lot of our movements and got people assassinated. We keep forgetting that. Oh no, they're cool. They've been here from the beginning. We're gonna need y'all to stand outside. Y'all can't come in. No. They didn't even should be at the same location. But we keep thinking we need other groups. No. Time and time again, if you look at history, very simply, anytime as we were fighting our ancestors for a way for us to make it, to live, to have our own communities within this nation, when they turn their mission and vision towards integration, this is when the most problems started happening between the different races. Now, some people may argue, hey, even when we segregated, they came all the way from over here to kill, steal, and destroy us, which is absolutely right. But as we look at it historically from a financial standpoint, we've never done well with integration. We've done excellent with segregation when it's talking about building Black business districts. Okay. I'm just naming some groups here. I've never seen this group in modern day world do anything. Okay. What about this political figure? In my good old state, Sheila Jackson Lee. I have no ill will to say. I'm just saying this is not to bash anyone. I'm just pointing out the fact that if some of you were timid about whether you should be a Democrat or Republican, or like myself, apolitical, no party at all until they start putting reparations on the table, I have no conversation for them or no support. What about this guy? He ran for president. He didn't speak about reparations, but they keep using Black faces to pull at your heartstrings in order to get your vote for their power and authority. See, these are just sock puppets for the system of white supremacy because they're just in place. They're like placeholders. Like, let me just put this right here. They're like a bookmark. Let me put this right here for another 4 years because we know ain't shit gonna happen for them. Good evening, Mitchell Liggins. Let me continue. Now, this is the most notorious of them all. James Coonan Clyburn. He will fight for every other group except for foundational Black Americans. He will fight for every other group except foundational Black Americans. He have helped pass legislation for Native American tribes. We understand that 574 Native American tribes are federally funded $2 billion each and every year. And with this year, got an influx, the most in history at $31 billion. See, some of you believe that we should be pulling ourselves up from our bootstraps. Some of you believe that we should be getting out of mud. Some of us believe that we should be grinding, and you're absolutely right. But this ain't about something we're asking for. This ain't something that we think we think we're entitled to. No, this is something that we are owed. When you look at every other group in America and the atrocities that the American government has caused towards those people, they've got some sort of reparation, some retribution, some funding, some support, some assistance. But they will give you this pipe dream that everybody just worked hard. Immigrant groups that came over here just worked hard, and we all had the same opportunities, that no one prevented Black Americans from doing anything in this country. And we know that to be a lie. We have hair discrimination. Family, do you hear me? We have hair discrimination, where these people will discriminate upon you, your loved ones, your children, simply because of their hair texture. Think about that for a while. Your hair. But see, as Nellie Fuller said, white supremacy operates in all human activities, and they take both sides of the argument. So it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. But understand, all these groups I showed you, BLM, NAACP, Correctional Black Caucus, all want you to vote Democrat, because if the 0.3% of them can stay wealthy, in power, and influence, then they're okay with keeping 99.7% of us down. Because I want you to remember what our president, it's hard to say, told us and what we represented to this country. But see, even when I show you this, small clip of what Joe Biden essentially said that the Black Americans were to this country, then I'm going to show you the contrast of what Joe Biden really.
The story of Black America is the story of America. It's the story of a people who have pushed this country to live up to its stated ideals. But Black
Give me a second,
people
family.
have always believed in the promise of a better America. So, at this moment we're in now,
I got this. This internet is
we must choose to fight for that better America.
Okay, Wendell.
And just like our ancestors who stood up to
Well, family, I'm having
the violent racists of a generation ago, we will stand up to
quickly. I'm having issues.
This.
I'm gonna play this for you. Give me 1 second. I got one more way. I'm gonna try to play this for you. Give me 1 second, family. Let's do this. Here we go. Family.
Have always believed in the promise of a better America. So, at this moment we're in now, we must choose to fight for that better America. And just like our ancestors who stood up to the violent racists of a generation ago, we will stand up to this president and say, no more. Because America is better than him. So we choose to be bigger. We choose to be bolder. We choose to bring back justice, respect, and dignity to this country.
We haven't received it yet.
We choose Joe Biden to lead us all towards that American promise together.
Oh, Latinos up first.
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
My Democratic colleagues don't like me saying this. I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the Negro, good for the black. And other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
The first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a story for me.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputation and career on the segregation of race in this country. Are you going to apologize? Like Corey Booker has
Apologize for what? For what?
Apologize for what? Apologize for what? These are your elected officials. See, and that was Kamala Harris fighting back when she was running against Joe Biden in the preliminaries. But she's no better though. Because we know, right, family? And I don't want to be
Do
the
you
dead horse
support
in this, but
reparations for Black people?
I'll pander you a little bit.
Well, listen, again, we had
I'm gonna
over
speed this up a
200
little
years.
bit.
You look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies. When you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that.
Let's be clear.
So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No, because whatever benefits that Black people.
Because we understand, family, that they won't do anything that solely benefits Black people, but they would do anything that benefits each and every other group. And of course, I've done many videos covering that support that they have for everyone else except for us. And this is the problem. Because when you really look at this, family, I really want you to think about what group have you known in America on a corporate level, on a political level, on a social level, who has massively assisted the Black community in decreasing the wealth gap? Why do you think reparations is such a big deal? Because anyone with a brain would tell you that there's these crazy figures out there. People has been configuring reparations for years, whether it be 14 trillion, 28 trillion. Some people even said $128 trillion. I'm just going to go with $14 trillion that each foundational Black American, 40 million of us and counting, probably even more than that, at least at bare minimum, a direct cash payment of $325,000. That would definitely decrease the wealth gap, because then you guys will actually go out and buy homes and start to build wealth and build equity inside those homes. But see, family, it runs deeper than that. Even if you bought a beautiful home within a Black thriving neighborhood somewhere, like there's a lot of Black thriving neighborhoods in Houston, did you know on average that your house still would be less in the same neighborhood if it was white? It would be worth more in a white neighborhood, but it's less because it's a Black neighborhood. Did you know that? So disparities in racial bias and redlining and gentrification, it's a bundle. White supremacy is a bundle. They don't take one out. They attack, they manipulate on all levels, whether it be giving you a small business loan, giving you allotted land. We have to understand how this system works, because there's no one for us. Now, I'm pretty sure there's some people that you can name locally, right? They may even be running for Congress, but how big their name is. Who do you know locally that their only agenda is Black empowerment? Now, some of you are going to argue and say, well, Ross, if they're going to be a certain person's congressman, they're supposed to be for all people. What I mean is this: they have a job to do. I understand that. But knowing of what is owed to Black Americans, which one of them are actually saying, this is what I'm going to do? Now, we understand that this being a congressman is some leadway, but we don't even have one in office, whether it be the Senate level, within the Congressional Black Caucus, or even a Black congressman to fight on our behalf, to actually speak up for those things. Now, if I'm wrong, let me know. Please post a name in the chat, because I've been looking, I've been searching. I haven't found any one of them yet. Not a one. But see, this where the trickery of white supremacy goes in. They understand that confusing or misleading the men is a lot harder. So what they started to do a long time ago, for like the past 30 years, they started to empower our women and divide the black family and put the woman above the man instead of us being equals of any sort. And then they made a full stop divide between the black community. A lot of us will not to believe this. I just want you to look at all the political and corporate structured moves of who they heavily give jobs to. See, this runs deep. This is just not a compartmentalized thing. They're all connected in some form of matter. See, a lot of us believe that redlining and housing has stopped. No, it's just shifted. They renamed it to gentrification. There's neighborhoods in DC where I'm from where there was the projects. They stripped all of that down and raised the rent $700. The rent was $700 for a 1-bed, 2-bedroom, and they doubled the price, knowing that 99.9% of the residents could not afford it. But what they'll do is they'll make sure that people who can afford it get those listings, move out, and in neighborhoods they want to conjure ghetto, that means ghetto. That's what the Nazis brought up, invented the ghetto with the Jews, and put us all in one place on top of each other. You got high rises in DC, you got high rises in New York, you got row houses in Baltimore. And if you ever seen a row house, they're literally in a row this big. The front of the house, you can almost touch one door to the other door of the adjacent home. That's how small row houses are when it comes to their front porch. Now, they may be long houses, but they're inadequate living. I mean, I could talk about this all day because it just don't stop at housing. It stopped at jobs. We need to understand that back in the 1700s, 1800s, a lot of insurance companies like New York Life was part of the slave trade financially by providing insurance to slave owners. And a lot of times you'll talk about people from the South will tell me, well, up there in DC, New York, they didn't have the same issues. Yes, we did. It was still racism. It was still slavery. People were still picking cotton. I mean, at one point in time, I think New York or DC, but I think it was New York that 1 out of 5 people that lived in New York were a slave. So there's so many things, family, that we can cover, but at the end of the day, we all we got because there's no one essentially for us. We've tried and tried and tried again. A lot of us believed in, and I say us, not including me, right? Excluding me, but us as a group believed that the Black Lives Matter movement could possibly be for us. We found out that was a lie. More Povich. Or what's the other guy's name? We found out that was a lie. We thought that the CBC would be an organization that assisted and supported Black Americans. We found out that was a lie. We thought the Democratic Party will help and support and live up to their word of all the promises, or rather empty promises they made to the Black community. We found out that was a lie. We thought the NAACP was a group for Black people. We found out that was a lie. Name a group on a massive scale of some of the same groups I mentioned here that help in decreasing the wealth gap, that fought for justice for Black Americans. Now, the reason why I said Jim Clyburn is the most notorious of them all because he told them to take out implied immunity from the police when they kill and shoot a black person. We know if that's wiped away, family, that in a court of law, when they commit a crime, when a race soldier wearing a badge commits a crime against a black person, then not only would that can be considered a hate crime, but they can get charged for murder and be convicted as such. And not one every 100 what we see now, like those huge cases. Believe me, there's many, many other cases of race soldiers with badges killing black people in the street unarmed, unprovoked in some cases. And provoked could pretty much go either way when you're dealing with them, but nonetheless, unprovoked. And we still don't receive justice. We have lack of support and funding for our school systems, for our community centers, for local and community clinics, inadequate access to contracts, government contracts, corporate contracts, private contracts. But they tell us we should lift ourselves up from our bootstraps and we can get it out the mud. And if we keep working hard, we keep grinding, we'll be able to achieve and be successful. In this system, you really don't know who's for us. You really don't know. Because let me just put a disclaimer. First and foremost, I don't think all white people are racist. But I believe by some small chance that a large population, a large portion of them do benefit from white privilege. Now, a lot of people like to disagree to that. That's fine. That's just my perspective. But when we really look at it and just cover some of these stories that we have witnessed, been a part of, heard of, when some people say that we get all these people that complain about racism and discrimination and atrocities against the black community, what you start to realize is that we can start to use that as an excuse, but it's the ultimate reason, right? We can't let our mind shift that we're in our predicament, we're in our condition because of ourselves. We didn't just help. We just didn't have help. We got placed where we are. We didn't get help. We got placed. There's laws on the book that prevented us from being homeless. There's laws on the book that prevented us from having businesses. You can't be homeless and you can't have a business. And you can't work in that part of town. Well, what can I do? Well, figure it out. And then going back, when we did figure it out and built our own communities, built our own houses and hospitals and clinics and shoe repair shops and anything within our community and grocery stores, we built it and they destroyed it. We built and they destroyed it. So it really doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, family, is really one question to be asked. What side are you on? Are you on Black empowerment side? Or you're on the side of white supremacy? Enjoy your holidays.